I suck at jiu-jitsu. How do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to the newest episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So today we are back to the secret notebook, and we are back to looking at something that other people just don't look at when it comes to jiu-jitsu. And I want to highlight this secret of what makes a really, really good jiu-jitsu guy. And, I really get to speak on this because I've gotten to fight a lot of really, really tough guys over the years. Really, really good, notable black belts, ADCC champions, world champions. And there is one obvious thing that all of them have in common, no matter whether they wrestle, no matter whether they pull guard. It's so obvious to me now. I see it as a huge part of jiu-jitsu that needs to be taught, and it's something I really do try to focus teaching my students. But I would say that it's very uncommon to teach your students this idea in this strategy. And a lot of times it's almost looked down upon, or it's just thought of, in my opinion, from the wrong perspective. And so what we're going to do today is going to change. It's going to be a little different. Years ago, we did this episode on mastering the blitz, and it was for learning how to pace well in jiu-jitsu and how good guys pace. And it was kind of based on the same idea. And we talked about this other idea, and we called it the prevent, meaning I am trying to just control the pace of the round and just prevent anything from happening. And then I'll use my blitz when I can, right? I use my blitz when I have the timing, when I have the energy to do it. And the idea was it was a strategy to beat guys that are better than you, okay? And it was just how I was explaining it. This is like one of the few strategies that I've seen that has allowed people to beat guys that are better than them. But there's also this other thing, and it's not as much of a strategy. You could call it a concept. You could even call this a technique. You could really call it whatever it is. But to me, it is the biggest part of jiu-jitsu that we don't see on Instagram, that we don't really see talked about, except for in the very beginning stages of beginner class. These things are not taught in advanced classes. They are not discussed in advanced classes, in my opinion. It's just something that you are expected to develop organically. And of course, some people will do that, but most people will not develop this trait organically, this skill organically. And it's the skill of defense. Great jiu-jitsu guys. Every great jiu-jitsu guy that I have had, I really do feel like I've probably put him in a position that I expected something better to happen, like a position that was very good at as a brown belt, as a black belt, when I was competing against these guys. And every single time, the difference between even the good black belts that I fought and the great black belts, the great black belt's ability to defend what I was doing in the moment and just have the feel of like, okay, this guy has my hip. He's playing a guard that he's been developing in his garage for years, and I've never seen before. I have no idea who he is. He puts me in this guard, and all I know is how it feels. I don't like what's touching my hip, and they just would like beat my control on their hip. And it would be something really simple, and it would just totally shake everything, and it would be something I'd never seen anyone else do. I'd put all kinds of different people in, for example, I played the duck guard for a really long time, and there were certain high-level guys that I would get there, and their response was so unique, and it was so like, it didn't seem pre-planned. It was like, okay, I'm feeling what's going on. This is how I'm going to respond. And really, that is what kept the match from starting to at least go in my direction a little bit. It wasn't the offense that those guys hit. Sometimes the offense that those guys hit was perfect, but it always came from great defense. And so that is what we're really going to look at today. And I know that people are like, is Josh going to tell us to like drill armbar defense? Is that really what we're going to do today? This doesn't seem like a deep thought that Josh would be pulling out of the secret notebook. I promise you, black belt, probably even a really high level black belt, down to white belt, you will understand defense so much better after this episode. Because for me, this is my 16 years of trying to understand defense in jiu-jitsu and understand how important it is. And I have a lot of different stories to tell you guys about just times that I really started to comprehend and focus on defense. And then years later, when those things really started to help me and really started to change my jiu-jitsu. And so I would say kind of a big thing to start with, and I think I highlighted all of our main points in that early rant. But I think the point I really want to start with is defense is not taught. And I know that you're saying, yeah, Josh doesn't know what he's talking about. We do elbow escapes in our gym. We do armbar escapes. We do triangle escapes. That's not what I'm talking about. That is what I mean. That's what people think of as defense in jiu-jitsu. That is what you would call your last layer of defense. Yes, it is defensive, but it's your last layer. There's so little that you can even do in those positions. Good jiu-jitsu guys don't get to those positions. They are able to defend so many moves ahead that you don't get them in bottom out in the armbar. Of course, they're good once they're there, but they don't get put there, right? And what I mean by that is there's this example that I'll give a lot of times when I'm teaching, especially when I'm playing guard and I'm teaching things from guard. A lot of what the top player could do, and like a lot of how guard is taught is like, this guy is going to sit right here because he's passing off his knees, and he's going to fight for underhooks, and you're going to fight for underhooks, and then whoever wins gets, I'm going to butterfly sweep him, or he is going to pass me, okay? And that's how it's taught. And the truth is, when you go with somebody good, a lot of times they don't fight for underhooks. All they do is not let you get underhooks. And they don't do it just by keeping their elbows tight. Usually when you reach, they stiff arm you in your shoulder. They stiff arm you in your head. They grab your wrist. They go 2-on-1 on your wrist. They do something in the hand fighting game that stops everything, okay? And so what I would call this, and this is a term I use, is hand fighting to death. If you are picking up a single leg on me, there's all these defenses. Put your head here, put your hand here, put your weight here, do this, do that, do this. But honestly, most people that do jiu-jitsu suck at the single leg. And if you just grab their hands and see if they can actually hold on to your leg, a lot of times they can't. That's just hand fighting. It's not a technique. And that's what I mean by like, I can never on the podcast share techniques with you guys. It's just so hard to communicate that over the podcast. That's why we have the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro, where it is video-based things that you can see. It's techniques that you can see. But when it comes to hand fighting is a really simple act. It is a really simple idea. And it is just like, if he wants to have this grip, why don't I just not let him? Well, then he wants to have this grip. Why don't I just not let him have that too? A lot of times after you do that a couple times, guys' jiu-jitsu just changes. Especially like, and this is, you can look at this top and bottom pretty easily when you look at the guard player. Most of the guard player's stuff is built around, this guy wants to pass my guard. But then they go to compete, and I mean, even at a low level, this happens now. They go to compete, and the guy doesn't want to pass the guard, and he doesn't engage the guard. And what ends up eventually happening is this guard player with amazing guard retention, this has happened to me many times, great guard retention. I never get passed in the gym, maybe even with higher level passers than guys that pass me in competition. But sometimes you just get so frustrated in competition, you want to make something happen on bottom. And if that guy is really playing good hand fighting and just not letting you get the underhooks that you want, not letting you underhook his legs, he just hand fights you. Everything is hand fighting you to death. You will sometimes, where you used to love an underhook and go, no, I only will play an underhook, you'll go, screw it, I'll just do an overhook right now. What else can I do? I have to get this going. And so, but understanding that that is a part of jiu-jitsu is so important. And it's not that idea of like, hey, just nullify everything. It really isn't taught. And I think a lot of times it isn't taught because it's looked down upon. It's like, oh, you should always be trying to finish the fight. And it's like, oh, you should? Really? You should always be trying to finish the fight. So in the UFC, they go out, they get in the center of the octagon, and they just throw haymakers? No, wrong. In boxing, they do that? No, wrong. In Muay Thai, they do that in Muay Thai. They're crazy in Muay Thai. Let's not talk about them. But in jiu-jitsu, you don't go out just trying to make things happen. You go try that on your coach. What happens when you try that on your coach and you just go after your coach? Usually he beats you up worse than before and you end up more tired and he is about the same amount of tired as he always is, right? And when you see that, it's like, wait, so going hard didn't translate to me winning. And then here's the other thought. While you were going crazy, was your coach matching your intensity? Probably not. One of my brown belts, Sal, was on the show not too long ago. Sal and George had an episode. He and I were talking about this idea of defense. We're talking about it from the feet. And I was saying, yeah, I like this idea of not really having to shoot as much anymore and really just playing wrestling defense and then upper body stuff. And he goes, oh yeah, wrestling like coach. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, oh, in high school, everybody has coaches. And he's like, and your coaches never shoot on you. He's like, they're always older, but they're much better wrestlers and they just hand fight you to death. They just, you start to try to pick up the single and it turns into an upper body throw, right? But they don't go for the offense that everybody else is posting on Instagram, that everybody else is watching, that everybody else is drilling over and over and over and over. What they do in the moment when they're actually doing a round now to protect their body, to make sure that they win more consistently, is they take less risks by playing more defense, right? You don't have to open up. It's like, when is the best time to hit somebody? It's when their hands come away from their chin, right? It's when they throw a punch. And so when is the best time to do jiu-jitsu on somebody? It's when they reach for your underhook. It's when they reach for your gi, when their arm extends away from their body, and it's just out ripe for the picking, wanting to be broken, wanting to be paired with a neck and put in a triangle, So many things can happen when your elbow leaves your body. But when your elbow stays to your ribs, especially both elbows, it starts to be a lot harder to do a lot of jiu-jitsu to you, right? When your hands can protect your hips, it becomes even harder to do jiu-jitsu to you. And so when you see good guys, they're just so good at that defense, but then for whatever reason, it's not highlighted. We only highlight the 3 moves of offense they do during the 10-minute match, and that's all we show. We don't show that they were going with the best guard player in the world and they stopped every single thing that he wanted to do. There is so much more in that than in the other stuff. Think about a 5-minute round that you do. How many actual offensive things like fully transpire, fully happen? How many, right? Maybe 3 in a, maybe 5 in a crazy round. If somebody's a lot better than you, maybe more. But if it's like a closer round, not a lot happens. Well, what's happening in in that in between? What's happening all the other time? The 4 minutes and 30 seconds that offense isn't happening. It's defense. It's you two nullifying each other. Your knee shield is keeping the guy from getting close. You are defending yourself, right? And when you look at jiu-jitsu that way, then you can start to play in your head, I'm covering my chin. Right now, I am safe. And it makes it so much easier to relax when you're in knee shield. And when you relax in knee shield, you'll notice like, man, this guy's getting frustrated and his arm just reached really far away from his body. And that gives me some offense. That gives me my underhook, right? But so often that little defensive hurdle that you throw on somebody is what sets up your offense. When I teach guillotine chokes, I like to teach them from top, like I'm doing a knee cut, or like the guy's trying to wrestle up while I'm on top, or a guy shooting on me. I do not like to teach them from bottom. And the reason I don't like to teach them from bottom is because they're very hard to catch on a guy because he doesn't put his head down. I need him to basically, he doesn't put his head down and lift his chin up, right? That's something that you don't see people do a lot, is like not have their chin tucked with their head low in jiu-jitsu. And so when you go to shoot a takedown on me, if I jump on the guillotine, a lot of times you'll just start your defense and beat me on it, right? If I just like, I see you going for this, and I just try to jump on your neck, a lot of times you'll free your neck. Because there's still, even in that offense, there's this layer of hesitation that you, as you get better in jiu-jitsu, you don't have to shoot through me super hard on your double leg. You just don't have to fight it really hard. And so what I do, if I jump on that guillotine, your like level of hesitation lets you go, okay, he's falling back anyway. Now I'm just going to start to try to pull my head out, right? And I give up top, or I give you the takedown because I wanted the guillotine. Versus, and this is, you don't see this happen, but this is what happens. I sprawl, and I sprawl with reckless abandon. I try to plant your face into the mat when I sprawl. And when I do that, yes, I may plant your face into the mat, but if you're good, you're going to kind of catch me and you're going to continue on your double leg. But you cannot catch me, continue on your double leg with hesitation anymore. You have to drive. And that is where my guillotine comes from. My guillotine came from my defense. The same as when somebody's wrestling up on me, like when they get an underhook from half guard and I'm going for a guillotine, I do not try to jump to the neck and follow the neck. The guy will, if a guy's good at that sweep, everybody does that. He will just follow you down. But if you lay heavy on his underhook and make him dig that underhook so hard that he cannot keep his chin tucked anymore, that's going to give you a chance at the neck. Jiu-jitsu has so many layers to it, every little position. And there is offense and defense in those layers. And so when we see a situation like that, defending the double leg, whether you jump for the guillotine or whether you defend the double leg, get the right reaction, and then jump for the guillotine, you will see just a huge amount of success and failure. But one, it's just so hard to see, like, you almost have to feel that. You have to be like, oh man, he sprawled on me really hard, or at least be paying attention to it. And so that kind of brings us to the next point, and that is that defense has layers. And so good guys, like, they not only can defend their guard really well, but to me, like, when we're talking about like being great in jiu-jitsu, I guess you could think of it like this. If we're just doing the 1 to 10 rating system, if I have a 9 guard retention, even an 8 guard retention, but I have 3 side control defense, okay? And that's what my side control defense is rated. If somebody has 9 guard passing, no matter what the situation is from there, I lose. Because nobody with 9 guard passing has 3 or less side control, right? On top. They're going to be able to finish you, right? And I see this. I see good guys not have bad position defense at all. or good position offense. Just like in jiu-jitsu, it's so easy to focus just on guard passing, right? And playing guard. And then guys like get put in side control and then the round is over. It's like they're getting submitted from there. But here's the thing. What if you had 8 guard retention and 8 side control defense? So your guard retention is down a little bit, right? Or even 7 and 7. You are still way better off because it is going to be so much harder to deal with a guy that has 2 layers to his jiu-jitsu that are both 7s, right? And then as you get better, this is really to me what I've noticed about getting really good at jiu-jitsu is like you start to see jiu-jitsu simpler first, and then you start to really define what the fights that you care about are. And that's like, and I think you do this over and over throughout your jiu-jitsu, but I just think that process is incredibly important, is like defining the parts of your jiu-jitsu that you want to be in, right? Because then you can decide like, hey, should I push to this or should I just hang back? And as you get good, your defense starts to have all these parts. For instance, when somebody approaches my guard, I am generally thinking about like putting my feet on them first, right? And then if they get around my feet, they're either going to meet my hands in some type of wrestle up, or they are going to hit my shins and knees, right? And if they start to try to get around my shins and knees, I'm going to try to get underneath them, like into an X guard or something like that. And if they get all the way around my shins and knees, I'm going to really make sure that my armpits are protected so I can start to turn towards them or turn away, okay? That was all before side control. That was like 4 layers of guard retention off the top of my head. And that's literally how it feels when I'm doing a round. Go. I'm starting on my butt. I'm like, I'm going to put my feet on this guy. Crap, he's around shins. Crap, hands. Crap, he's way too close. I'm going to spin out. There was a match. I told you guys about it. I did in Memphis. It was my first match back after Matthew was born. And I was a little chubby, and I did Master 1. I did the Open. And in the final, I had a guy, I think he was like 6'10", 6'9", something like that. I think it was 6'10". And he... there was one point early that's exactly what happened. I tried to go feet on him. He was long enough to like kind of get out of the way. As soon as my knee shield started to touch him, he was like leg weaving me and was around. Totally got like chest to chest for a second, but I was still had my armpits free. I was able to free myself, was able to spin out. And I don't think there was an advantage for it. I think it was even quick enough that nothing happened from it. But he went through all 4 layers. And if I didn't have 4 layers there, he was passing my guard. If that, those first 3 are how most people teach guard, right? But to me, that last really important fight of can you hold me down in side control? Can you hold me down in mount? That's a very important fight. And so I focused on that for a very long time too. And it paid off in that moment. But when you also look at defense and layers, we've been looking at defense from the defensive side of defense. Now we're going to kind of switch to the offensive side of defense, because all good offense is based in defense in jiu-jitsu. It really is, because if it wasn't, they would be getting caught in stuff while they're going for the offense. If it wasn't, there would be consequences for it, right? It is the fact that the best guys go out and they do it to everybody. They do the same thing to everybody, right? What does that mean? Well, that means that the second best guys in the world aren't doing the offense that they always do, right? They're not going out. The greats don't go out and have wars that are different with everybody. Most of the fights that they have are exactly the same. Why? Well, it's because they are on the feet. You never get them a layer back, right? And then they progress to the next layer. And so then they take you down. And so then when they're passing your guard, you never get them to the grips or the distance that they like to defend, that they do not like to play against. Then there's just so much less risk to their game because it's built in defense, right? Or best guy pulls guard, same exact thing. You never see his guard get past. And then eventually he hits the same sweep that he hits on everybody. And it's not usually like they do this in 30 seconds. Most of the time, these dudes do this in 5 minutes. They do it they kind of work with the time. But there's also this thought of like, when you're going with a really good guy, if you don't engage, a lot of times it's hard for him to do jiu-jitsu. I always give this example. I don't teach these anymore, but I used to teach like women's self-defense seminars. And I would always give this example of what distance management was. And so I would be like, have my guy, my uki stand like at punching distance. And I'd be like, okay, pretend to throw a punch. Okay, he can hit me here. And then I would stand super duper close, like to where I'm just basically running over him the whole time. And I like throw a punch. It was very hard to throw anything real at that distance. But then the last example of distance management is like, okay, you stay right here. And then I would walk literally as obnoxiously far away as I could for the sake of the demonstration. And then be like, punch me from there. And you couldn't, right? And so there is a distance that keeps the best jiu-jitsu from working, right? I'm pretty sure Roger Gracie is in England right now. His jiu-jitsu doesn't work on me while he's in England and I'm in Granite City. If he was in Granite City, if I was in England, it would work. But because of that distance, it doesn't work. And the funny thing is, that distance is connection, right? If you are far enough in jiu-jitsu for somebody to touch you and keep touching you, they're not going to be able to do jiu-jitsu. And so if you go with your black belt tonight, if you want to get kicked out of your gym, what you do tonight, you go in with your coach. You get to start on top, okay? It's going to be way harder to do from bottom unless your retention is just insane. But you get to start on top, and you don't let him control the crooks of your knees. If you're in the gi, you pummel sleeves, you fight your sleeves to death, you fight the collar grips to death. But if it's no gi or if it's gi, these are the places you don't let him touch. Don't let him touch the crooks of your knees. Don't let him touch your armpits. Don't let him touch your hips. And don't let him break your posture, whether with a collar grip or with a collar tie, okay? Those 4 things. I know it sounds like a lot, but how you're going to do it is by disengaging, meaning taking a step back when he starts to get one of those things, because most of those things you just beat by taking a step back. And then besides that, you hand fight. If he grabs your right wrist, you use your left hand to break that grip. If he grabs your right leg, you use both hands to free that, and then you scoot away. And if you do this, there will be a lot of blue belts that were able to go 0-0 in a round with their coach, and even some who will get their coach so frustrated that they'll go for something and they'll hit offense that they never did. You'll get kicked out of your gym. I don't really recommend this, but if you did do this as an experiment, it would be funny. I would love to hear about it. If you do it at my gym, we're going to beat you down, though. But when you look at the layers of offense and you look at the layers of defense, having multiple layers is also this thing that if you do that to me, okay, so that blue belt way that you can beat your coach, if you just disengage and you hand fight everything to death, and you play the distance as much as you can, what will happen? 1, you'll get kicked off your team, but 2, people will have to have a new approach to how they do jiu-jitsu to you. If your coach is really smart, if your coach is really good, he's going to read what you're doing. And he is probably either, if he's a good wrestler and he's just going to be mean to you, he's probably going to hurt you and you shouldn't do this. But if he doesn't have good wrestling and he can't just stand up and take you down, what he's probably going to do is he's probably going to start to relax his guard even more, start to lay flat on his back, start to put his legs on the floor. Like, go ahead, pass my guard. Start to even let you get into side control, let you get into mount, right? Because again, once he's connected to you, we're doing jiu-jitsu again, and you can't, it's going to be much harder to disengage. And so if he's smart, maybe he gives you a few layers. Why? Because his mount defense is also a 9 out of 10. And he knows your mount offense is a 2 out of 10. So he's not worried about it, right? He knows he's going to get you back into the guard that he wants anyway, and he's going to beat you. But again, that comes from layers of defense. And I know that it doesn't, it's so hard to see this happening. But in jiu-jitsu competitions with good guys, you see this, we'll see this at ADCC probably more than you see it anywhere else, because the time is so long. You literally, in a 20-minute match, you have to disengage. That's just how it is. You have to disengage at points. In a 10-minute match, you have to, most of the time people disengage in no-gi, but you at least have to have some pace control for a 10-minute match, right? Unless you're in a really low weight class. But like, yeah, even if you're juicy, if you're above like 190 pounds, it is going to almost be impossible to have a 10-minute banger of a match, or 15, however long those are. They're forever. But what you will see happen all the time is you will see people disengage. And so then the guard players, the leg lockers especially, you will see them play this guard where they lay on their side. We call it the Burt Reynolds, where you're doing that like Burt Reynolds pose where his elbows posted and his hands resting. And I think he's got like jean shorts on or something. It's a weird, I don't know what he's got. I don't know what the sitch is, but I know I know we call it the Burt Reynolds. But basically inviting the guy like, hey, you get to start past my guard. And that's how confident these guys have to be in leg locks. But it's also the only way they can get the top guy to engage consistently, right? Is being able to say, hey, I'm going to lower my defense so you can come in. And so that was our second point, that defense has layers. Let's go ahead and we will take a quick commercial and come back with our last thoughts on this. And the last thoughts are going to pull everything together. Hey guys, Josh here. Just wanted to interrupt really quick and tell you about something really exciting that we have going on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro. I told you about it earlier in this episode, but what it is every course that I have made on simplifying Jiu-Jitsu. So I told you guys about the duck guard, and this was this guard that I invented in 2019 when I was a black belt, or when I just got my black belt. And in 2022, we filmed it and put it out as an instructional. And this is one of 8 different courses that are on ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro right now. And we also have one that Steve McKinney, my dad, and I do called How to Learn Jiu-Jitsu, where we take you through our ideas on training method. What's really cool about that episode is he and I have basically throughout our jiu-jitsu had all these different phases where we were training in our garage just together, and we took How to Learn Jiu-Jitsu and we took all of those training methods that we kind of learned and all those ideas on training, and we turned it into more of a watchable movie type video and not a instructional jiu-jitsu course, something that you could and sit down and enjoy watching while you learn jiu-jitsu. And then on top of that, we have our newest course on the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro right now, and that is the Trinity of Guard Passing. I have been teaching guard passing around the country. I have passed some incredibly high-level guards in jiu-jitsu competition, and I really think that this idea itself, and not just my delivery, is just really, really helpful for people. Beginners seem to just really get to understand what they're doing even before they know any guard passing techniques by this idea of chest over chest, this idea of chin over trap. A lot of the reviews that you guys have been seeing on my Instagram and seeing posted have been about this concept that I've never shared on YouTube or anything, and it's called chin over trap. And again, there's a few other concepts that are just huge game changers that will teach you about the offensive and defensive aspects of passing the guard, and will teach you what high-level guys do really, really easily and really conceptually. And then on top of all of that, all of these courses are available for only $20 a month, and that is at the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro. That is available right now. There's a link in the description, and I will stop rambling, and we will go ahead and get back to the episode. And we are back. So next thought on jiu-jitsu and defense. And now we're going to start to we looked at kind of why defense isn't looked at, what defense is. And now I want to kind of look at why defense is, what we use it for. And then on top of that, after we look at what we use it for, we're going to look at some actual kind of quick thoughts on implementation. How do we then take all of these random ideas that Josh McKinney just shared with us, and how do we actually put them into our jiu-jitsu, minus the weird example where he has us making our coach mad and getting us kicked out of the gym. So next thought is the best defense controls the clock, your opponent's movement, and your energy level, okay? A lot of times you could really define all three of these with the best defense controls the pace, right? That is the clock, that is your opponent, and how much he gets to move. That's a huge part of the pace. And then you control the pace for your energy level, right? And so when we're thinking about defense in that aspect, you always can look at how good Gordon Ryan is when you're giving examples for jiu-jitsu, right? And this is no different. When you see his defense, especially when you see his defense mixed with his pace, it allows him to go at this constant rate forward because he's never worried about taking a step forward. While most people are not defensively good enough to just be able to walk forward, he is. And if you watch, it allows him to control the space. And most of the time when you see a guy going with Gordon, there is no space unless he wants there to be. It is always there is no space. It's hard for them to get away. It's hard for them to have any control of how intense the match is, where the match is taking place. And Gordon's not getting tired. He can do 45-hour-long matches with the right pace. Nobody can run a sprint for 10 minutes. No one can just run flat out like that. You're not Matt Damon. What is that? The Born Supremacy? The Born Identity. Yeah, the Born Identity. You're not Matt Damon in the Born Identity. And when you think about that, most jiu-jitsu guys, most good jiu-jitsu guys, and I've heard this is actually the I was in my notes, I was write quotes, and the quote that I think about when it comes to what the best defense is and what the best defense does, again, is its relationship to offense. I just remember I was with my black belt, Eric's, one of my wrestling coaches, and we were talking about, that I was not hand fighting enough on the feet and I was shooting too much. And we have this conversation once a week over the last 12 years. And the thing that he always will try to take me back to is if I'm great, if I'm the best wrestler, then I take one shot a match, because the best wrestler in the world shoots once per match. right? He doesn't need to shoot a bunch of times. His offense is so good. His setup is so good. Everything is so good. Then it's just about him going through the rest of that match, with not letting that guy get anything and hand fighting that guy a bunch, wearing that guy down, setting up that one bit of offense, right? And in that time, you cannot set up your one offense while your guard is getting passed and now you're mounted, now your back's taken. You're not setting up your offense there. But if the guy is getting frustrated in your guard, even if nothing's happening and he's trying harder than you are, in my opinion, when we look at jiu-jitsu and we look at the fact that jiu-jitsu rounds generally are timed, and so that's an aspect of that's a dimension of the jiu-jitsu match is the time. I am now controlling the time because you are using more energy than me, meaning like over these next 3 minutes, if we just keep doing this and this is our exchange, and every time, even if you have better cardio than me, if we keep exchanging in a way that I am not getting tired and you are getting more tired, well, it doesn't matter. You can make more money than me, but if you don't spend it well, are you really richer than me? Probably not, right? If you don't know if you waste it, just like your energy, you can have phenomenal cardio and you can even have phenomenal jiu-jitsu. But if you waste all your energy, you're going to get tired. And if you do get tired, you don't have phenomenal jiu-jitsu. Very few people's jiu-jitsu works well when they're tired. And so when we're looking at why we need to be controlling the pace, why it is so important, why we need to be defensive in our jiu-jitsu, it is because we can take a normal round where the clock exists and it's just me and rando Dave and we're fighting to the death. And we take that normal round and we change it. And with the right pace, with the right defense, with the right positions, with the right understanding, we can change that round from being me versus Dave to me and the clock versus Dave. Me and oxygen versus Dave, and what happens is when you can think of jiu-jitsu that way, when you can think like, okay, 3 minutes down the road, I'm going to get something. 3 minutes down the road, I'm going to hit this triangle. Like that changes the way that jiu-jitsu works for you. That just changes jiu-jitsu for you. When you can stop seeing every position and being like, what offense do I know from here? And start just playing jiu-jitsu in the position for as long as necessary because you have good enough defense, you'll start to hit your offense better because then you'll only go for it when it's actually there, right? And so that is that original argument that all the greats, their jiu-jitsu is based in defense. And so now let's look at some really simple, actionable steps to how you can develop good defense. If you're a coach, how you can develop it in your students, and if you are a student, how you can develop it in yourself. And so a big thing is defensive days. I tell you guys this when it comes to jiu-jitsu training, and I'm just buying more and more into this idea that having days where you yourself, yes, it's awesome if the whole class does it, but you yourself come in with a focus, right? And I've always taught you guys to have a move focus. Go focus on this specific thing, and that's what we call the end goal method. But that is not the only method of training with focus. Sometimes my focus is defense. Sometimes my focus is effort. I'm going into my jiu-jitsu rounds and I'm like, I don't care what happens today. I'm willing to sacrifice my effectiveness so I can be super efficient today. I want to use 20% of the energy that I normally use. And I'm going to still do rounds. I'm still do rounds with tough guys. And so that means you're going to get beat down doing that, especially at first. Ideally, though, you will start to get good enough with that limitation of not getting tired. And it's not going to be based in your offense. It is going to be based in your defense. But a lot of times, for me, once a week, I come in and I'm like, I am playing a ton of turtle And sometimes that turns into wrestle up, right? And I'm also willing to give up any position that a guy fights hard for, right? And just give him something to see if I can work out of it. And that makes a huge difference for me, just that little focus shift. Something else, and we only do this once a week, but once a week we drill bad positions and we positional spar bad positions. And then even different mentalities of like, hey, top guy's up a point and his job is only to keep you down. And so like having some scenarios where you have to work on those layers of your jiu-jitsu, and doing those week in and week out, I notice for me, they've helped me so much, even because it's not like I've always done this, but since we have had our school, so for like the last 9 years, I would say about 8 of those years, we've done at least once a week positional sparred the 3 main bad positions, mount, side control, and the back. And makes such a difference for me. But I notice now too, my guys have been with me for a long time. All of them, even the guys that aren't as good in other positions, they are all good in side control, mount, and the back, top and bottom. They've just got enough reps doing those. And the reason that those places are not usually sparred, one, it's hard. It is way more exhausting because there's just more of a fight when you're that close to each other. You know what I mean? And one guy's starting a little behind. And if there's a skill difference, you're getting to start ahead of a guy that usually beats you down, you know? And so it's just, you know, the pace tends to change. But most of the time, people are so afraid of losing in the gym that they don't want to spar bad positions. They're so afraid of losing in the gym, they don't want to play defense, and they won't give people certain things. Now, there is a caveat to this. You don't give people things that risk you getting injured. If you don't have the ultimate armbar defense, you don't give up your arm saying, I want to work against somebody who's going live with you, because people get way too excited. They crank on stuff. You're risking injury when you do that. I think it's smart, though, if you're going to go in a situation like that, I think it's really smart to be like, okay, if I'm trying to work deep armbar defense, I'm almost doing it positionally with somebody that I can trust that won't crank it, and we can do it at 20%, right? It's just too risky to work late stage defense with hard submissions like full speed, in my opinion. And I've just seen, you know, guys, anytime I've seen guys that will positional spar a spider web too many times, guys end up getting their arms ripped off just because people are crazy. And so when I see that like, okay, there is a chance of injury, you want to be smart about who you're training with, especially on those defensive days. Because like there are guys that are my students that I wouldn't let have side control on me on my defensive day because they're a psycho and I just don't want them to hurt me. And so I will play my layers of jiu-jitsu, and I may play defensively in those layers, but I just will play more layers of jiu-jitsu. And so it's like this, the more that you have that, the more layers you have in your jiu-jitsu game, the more jiu-jitsu you have to use. And those layers, you only keep people in if you have good defense. If not, they just walk right through them, right? And so they're not actually layers of your jiu-jitsu. And so were those my only thoughts on how to get better at? No, there was one more. So also the last thought on this of like, how do you implement this without just doing a day where you're only focused on defense, or you just let people, you know, start in good positions, bad positions, whatever, right? Sometimes if you will focus, and this is like the opposite of the end goal method, I don't even know what you would call this. If you will focus for a long period of time on a bad position with the goal of being able to survive and escape there relaxed. It's different than end goaling something where you're just looking for Kimura, right? You're just looking for armbar. But it really, it feels very similar, and it's incredibly effective. And so for a period of time, and then you have to correct this because you're basically giving yourself a bad habit. But for a period of time, you let everybody pass your guard and get into side control, but you don't really show them that you're doing it, because a lot of times you'll get a different energy. And then you get out of side control, and that's when your round starts. And you just get like 1 rep every single round doing it. And this is it gets you better at it because you do 4 or 5 rounds. You're tired that last time you let the guy get you in side control. And so your side control escape is going to have to be super efficient and effective. And it might mean you have to sit in side control for a bit, right? But once you get out, then you're tying your escape back to your offense. And it's so hard for people once a certain cycle happens in a jiu-jitsu round or a jiu-jitsu match to not feel like that cycle is happening the rest of the time. Meaning when you and your buddy are rolling light, quote unquote, which nobody ever is, and you both start to go a little hard. And there's just one little 10-second position where you both go a little harder than you probably should have. And we know it's both of you. It's not just your buddy, but you both go a little too hard in the position. And after that, it's like, okay, now we're fighting to the death. What? Why didn't we just adjust back? Well, it's because it's really hard to acknowledge that and adjust mid-round for people. Once you start to get beat up by somebody, it's really hard mentally to come back. Even if the guy gasses, or even if he was just good in one position, just for whatever reason, it's easy to play in your head like, oh, this guy's going to beat me everywhere. Here we go. But if you do this like bad position escape, deep defense escape, right back into offense, and then win your round, when it happens in a tournament and the dude passes you to side control and then you actually have to escape, it won't be like, oh, he's just going to pass me again. It will be like right into my offense. And it just, I don't know, being able to go from defense to offense is also the incredible, kind of the most shocking part when you're going with a guy that hasn't been doing anything and then he finally decides to do something. It's so scary. It's like, oh no, I thought he wasn't going to do jiu-jitsu. He is doing jiu-jitsu. This sucks. There's a point in Dragon Ball Z where they're like, really early on, where they stopped using the scouters to see people's power levels. And the reason was, one, they started to all realize like how to check each other, feel each other's power level. But the reason was because people from Earth would hide their power level and save it, and then all at 1 second use it as much as they could in a big burst. And it was like the most effective way for them to beat guys that were much stronger than them and had much higher power levels, right? And it was because it was based in defense, right? It was not based in let's go all out with this guy who we know is stronger than us, right? I know I use Dragon Ball Z references too much, but I mean, that's the martial arts journey right there, bro. And so the last little caveat with that method is don't do this too long. I don't think you want to let people be passing your guard for more than 6 weeks. I'm usually like 6 weeks to 6 months. 2 weeks to 6 weeks on this method. You don't really need as long, and then you can move on to the next bad position. But then make sure you're going back to times where you're not letting people pass your guard, and that will make a huge difference too. It's just it's easy to develop bad habits in your jiu-jitsu. I've done this even as a black belt, where I've worked turtle so much that like I stopped playing open guard defense at all. And then like I would go to a black belt competition, I'm playing turtle, and I was like, wait, I really intended on playing some type of guard. I wish I wasn't here. I mean, I feel good in this position, but I wish I wasn't here now. I wish he made me be here. That was why I wanted to work this layer. And so make sure that you're not making bad position your jiu-jitsu, but it's definitely a good way to work on it. And just make sure that you have many layers of defense, and your jiu-jitsu will be just so much better. I have so many matches that I can look back to where a guy was piecing me up early and I came back and won. And ideally you don't get pieced up early, but just being able to go like, I specifically remember there was a match that we did. It was Respect 3. It was my first match at brown belt. Kyle had actually accepted the match when I was still a purple belt, and that was what made me know that he was about to promote me, is that I had a brown belt on the card. And he was a good, accomplished brown belt already, and it was going to be like first test. It's in my hometown, and it felt big. And I sweep him early. I pulled and sweep him early, and I'm up 2, and he hits like an arm drag to back take on me and gets like figure 4 body lock on me, and I'm hand fighting. I have actually a decent position with my hands, but not an ideal situation. Eventually, it's like there's a good second where my back's taken, and then I'm in an arm bar that I had to escape off of the back take. But eventually it brought me back into the match. I got out of that arm bar, and then we were cooking, bro. And I was able to win that one. But it really came from that defense. Another example in this one, man, my defense shined great in this match. I've told you guys when I was a brown belt, I had just competed against Hanato Canuto. It was my second brown belt match, and he had just won the worlds at brown belt, and it didn't go as well. And there was this point though where he had my back, and this was 7 seconds into the match, and then had me in a really tight arm bar that I was able to escape. And it allowed me to just get beat up for longer. I probably should have just tapped to the arm bar. But it did allow me to continue to fight. It actually gave me a chance at a submission. I missed it, but it did give me a shot in the match with a guy that was significantly better than me. And it was like very noticeable. But the only reason I got to compete with him was because I had layers of defense. Even when my back got taken and I was getting put in an arm lock, I was able to escape, right? And so I have so many different competitive stories of like how it wasn't the offense that people talked about. It was the defense that nobody paid attention to that just made that match work, right? And I've had that happen so many times. I specifically, one other random one is I just remember a match. This was another respect card. I fought a really good Toriando pass guy, and it was back to that layers of defense thing. I had a really good answer for Toriando in the gi, and I was like, I remember watching him, and I was just so sure that like I had no idea what was going to happen in the match, but this dude had like one really big offense that he played. He did not play other stuff, and that was where all of his matches were won. Is like he would just pass guys to death. And I was like, well, he's not going to do that one pass to me. Defensively, I am not going to let that happen. And then it was almost as if like once that wasn't there, we were cooking. I could just tell like, oh man, his whole game was based in that guys don't know how to defend this. And so that was just another example of defense trumping offense. And it's like they say, the best offense is a good defense. I don't think that's what they say, but that's what I just said. But it's like what they say. Defense wins championships, right? Offense wins games. That sounds cool. I would buy that in jiu-jitsu too. If you really think about it, that is, again, the best guys are the guys that don't allow stuff to happen. And when it does, they have layers to it that they can come back and get back to their offense. But again, that is all I have for you. That's what I'll leave you guys with today. The idea is simple for the day. Go and let people waste all their energy trying to beat you up, and then in the last minute, rise from the dead like the Undertaker and, tombstone pile driver those people. And that is the note that I will leave you guys today with. Make sure that you check out the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro. Sign up for the Gi Gazette, absolutely free. Link in the description. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode. I hope that you guys are having a great day, having a great month, having a great year so far. And I hope today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.